What's up, everybody? We are officially here. The bracket is set. Selection Sunday is in the past, and that means let's start filling out some brackets. Come on now. It is Monday morning, and it is never too early to fill out a bracket. And here at OddsShopper, we're ready to do that. I'm Ben Rasa. Matt Gajewski, the man himself, joins me, my college football brother. I haven't done a show with you in quite a while. I'm very excited to talk to you about the bracket, my friend. First of all, how are you?
I'm doing great. Also excited to see you and fill out a
Yes.
bracket. It's been a long time. And this is one of my favorite shows every single year. So I'm pumped, man. How are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah. Listen, we slogged through conference tournaments, the regular season, ups, downs, all sorts of teams. And now it's here. And we get to fill out the bracket. Should be no problem just completing a perfect bracket here at OddsShopper. Easy game. We just put all those winners right in there. We also have some really sick stuff. I'm gonna share it pretty quickly here because it is actually awesome of what we're doing at OddsShopper. We have an amazing offer for a single dollar. I'll tell you how to get that in just a second. But before we start giving picks, because we're gonna go through the entire bracket, I did want to just ask you right off the top. Everybody, it's kind of like the college football playoff. There's always some gripes. What did you think of seeding? What did you think of Indiana State, St. John's? Anything major? Or do you think it's just always like that in terms of who's in and who's out?
Yeah, it's unfortunate for the bubble teams. We had the bid stealers. That's usually
Yep.
there's not five of them. Like we get a couple every single year. Georgetown stole a bid 2 or 3 years ago, something absurd running through the Big East. But we had that with NC State and a few other teams like UAB, Duquesne, who wouldn't normally be in the field. So that's just what it is. You have to take care of business in the regular season. And if you put yourself in that situation, you might end up in the NIT or declining an NIT invitation if you're like a St. John's or something. But yeah, feel bad. Some of those teams are really good. The field is definitely weaker with NC State and those teams having won, but that's part of the madness and part of why we love this.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, there's multiple teams that made runs in conference tournaments that did steal those bids. And it's very noisy about non-con and what are you done? Are you one of the best teams? Are you one of the most deserving teams? We see that all the time. I thought that the seeding with a couple teams was a little funky. I think who's in and who's out wasn't that big a deal. The Mountain West in particular and the Big East, or you're a Big East guy. Were you surprised they only got three?
I was, and that's part of exactly what we were just talking about. St. John's, I believe they have one win over tournament level competition. Then you have teams like Seton Hall who beat UConn, but then lose to other egregious teams. So they all have warts. And then when NC State and Duquesne win their conference tournament, you're the team that gets left out. So that's unfortunate. The Mountain West was a little underseeded. There was some noise in that tournament, of course. New Mexico, you could argue they were a bid stealers. I think they should have been in. They're highly rated across the industry, but underseeded across the board. And then, St. Mary's and Gonzaga both getting fives. That was a little bit rich considering they only play each other in a couple decent non-con teams. But yeah, no real gripes with it. Just seeding was a little weird.
Yeah, fair enough. Again, all right. Let's get to the important stuff here. I'm going to do a couple of things. One, we're going to go right through a bracket. No doubt about it. That's the good stuff. But the better stuff, you're going to see this a couple of times, but no better time than right here. OddsShopper Premium. If you've heard about it, if you've seen it, maybe you've even tried it. We have been constantly adding tools. We have been building up our Discord. We drop picks. We've got process. We've got a community. And again, these are tools that can really help you make the difference. We're offering it all. Again, I just want to stress it's for a week, but it's $1. So if you ever were interested in OddsShopper, if you are filling out a bracket, if you're in an office pool, if you say I'm going to be betting some of these games and I just want some advice, I want to hang out with some people, it's all there. The link is below and it's $1. You will get a full week of OddsShopper Premium. You have to use the code MADNESS. You see the offer ends right when the games tip. But man, I'll be highlighting some of the tools during the show. But I couldn't be more excited that we're doing it. And it's just a great time. Me and Matt will both be involved in Discord, having some fun. I already dropped some picks, and I want to hear what you're doing here. But let's get to the bracket. We're starting in the East, and I will give you the first game, of course, the Hatters. Yeah, that's an unfortunate draw for them.
Yeah, I think the big question is, do we see a Purdue repeat this year in any of the one seed games? I especially don't see it here. I view UConn as the top team and probably just going to leave the analysis for future matchups.
Yeah, there's nothing to say there. There is some things to say here, though, and I definitely want your quick take as well. I went back and forth with FAU and Northwestern. I'm really not an FAU fan. I don't like their team, But Northwestern, I worry about the depth. They've lost some players. I like Boo Buie. I was leaning Owls. Where were you leaning here?
Another one I really wanted your opinion on. If you could guarantee me Northwestern was full strength, which you
Yeah.
can't, I would take them without a doubt. Ty Berry's out for the year. Matthew Nicholson on crutches last time we saw him. I don't think he's going to play in this game. They've also had Langboard banged up, and Boo Buie's missed a couple minutes in recent games. The guy's a warrior. But I just don't know the health of this team. And FAU, you can almost guarantee it outside of Trey Carroll, who's just a bench player anyway. So it's Owls kind of by default, even though they're a team I'm not really that excited about either.
Yeah, I feel legitimately the same way. Not excited about them, but by default, that was where I was drawn to. Interesting matchup here. You mentioned a bid stealer. San Diego State, obviously a team that made a deep run last year against the bid stealer in UAB. Do you think there's anything UAB can do to speed them up and cause problems, or too much Aztecs here?
I think this is a spot where the Aztecs are underrated, having lost in their conference tournament. But UAB, yeah, they play a little fast. They have some really good players like Gaines and Yaxel Lendenberg are awesome, but this team doesn't really shoot the ball well. They're 215th in effective field goal. And San Diego State is kind of a bad matchup for them. They defend the interior really well with Ledee. They are about even in height. Awesome interior presence for San Diego State. And then that team is just much deeper than what UAB has on the floor right now. It's basically a team comprised of like JUCO transfers. So I like San Diego State in this game. They're a team I'm actually probably going to bet against the spread too.
Interesting. Yeah, I have not bet that game. This one, I don't think, it should have been Brown, but it really should have been. It should have been Brown, but it shouldn't have been Princeton in the sense that they deserve to win. They're just clearly the best Ivy League team. And I think that's something that is glossed over a little bit. And I want to see if it translates. It's not just the bid stealers from one bid leagues that turned into two bid leagues. Some of the one bid leagues just didn't get their best team in. And I do think that does affect some of these matchups. Yale's a fine team, but I think Auburn runs them out. Do you see anything here that concerns you?
Not really. I agree with you. I do like Yale, big 7-footer in Wolf, and they have Nolings. They have some pretty solid players, but getting the Auburn draw is horrific. Who's sizable, deep. They don't have quite the resume, but we can probably talk about that in future matchups in this tournament. But yeah, I don't see an upset occurring here.
BYU and another bid stealer from my conference, the A10 in Duquesne. I've seen a lot of Duquesne basketball here, but BYU, the way they shoot the three, I don't know what to make of them, honestly. Do you think they're a dangerous team, or do you think they could have trouble against Duquesne's defense?
This team shoots almost more threes than any other team in the country. They play fast. It's going to be a fun matchup. Duquesne definitely going to try to slow this and win through defense, but I just don't see how they really stop BYU's three-point shooting. This Duquesne team 67th defending the three. They've dealt with some injuries this year. A lot of their losses occurred when Day Grant, their best player, was out, but they still just can't shoot. The effective field goal gap is massive. BYU 23, Duquesne 189, and BYU plays one of the deepest lineups in the tournament. It's an 8-point spread on paper. So another thing we probably should mention, when you're looking for some of these like 6-11 upsets, 5-12 upsets, you can find ones that are closer in terms of spread than this one, which is sitting around 8.5 in the industry. So it's one that I don't personally like, but I don't know. What did you think of Duquesne running the conference tournament? I wasn't all that impressed. They beat, St. Louis, Dayton, Bonaventure was a big win, and then they had to play VCU in the final, which was a bit concerning, I think. The 5 seed in the final against Duquesne, the 6 seed. I don't know. Weird tournament.
Yeah. I mean, these teams, the parity in the A10, like, how good is Richmond, really? Like, teams like that, I found them all somewhat in the similar bucket. So I like Duquesne. I think this is, again, and I'm going to have some wacky upsets in the bracket. I don't know if this is really one of them. And I don't think it's too concerning because for me, I really like Illinois. I think they're extremely dangerous. I know Moorhead has a top-end player. I don't think that they can handle Shannon and Donosk, and I'm not sure BYU can. We'll talk about that in a minute, but Illinois I'm really high on. Are you high on them?
Yeah, love Illinois. The only real concerns with them are defensively, which I think we'll get into in future matchups because they play a weird lineup with Hawkins at the 5, and then they don't really have any shooters. They kind of just have these ISO players in Damask and Shannon, which has worked really well for them because they're so athletic. But on the other side, you do have a couple elite players for Moorhead. Minix is awesome. He's
Yes.
the number one player in that conference. Lathan is second, but I don't think it's going to be enough. When you look at their resume, I mean, like, they only have 2 wins in the top 200, and they were against Chattanooga and Little Rock. So I'm not really buying the resume from Moorhead.
You mentioned some of the quote unquote upsets by seed, but are they even really upsets? And this would be an example of that. Washington State and Drake, a 7-10 matchup. Where do you lean here? And again, you can't really even call this an upset if you go with Drake.
Yeah, I have a question for you because we have a couple Pac-12 teams, Oregon obviously stealing the bid.
Yep.
I think this conference is really weak. So I tend to side with Drake. I'll get into some of the analysis in a second, but I wanted to hear your thoughts on, I guess, Pac-12 landscape and how that pertains to Washington State.
So I'm splitting the difference, and maybe it's just I've had a blind spot all year. I don't like Washington State. I think just the way they're constructed, I don't like their style. I think Drake is going to cause a lot of problems. I do like Colorado, and I do like Oregon in their game, but that's in another region. So Arizona, I have no idea. They're just a Ponzi scheme. But for this game, I know it's like a 1-point spread. I personally am leaning towards the 10 seed here.
I like Drake as well. They're the far better shooting team. Effective field goal gap 27 to 95. Interior, it's 23 to 86. From 3, it's even worse. Drake is 33rd in the country, 3-point percentage. Washington State is 174th. Now, the Washington State has one advantage. It's on the inside. They have a massive height advantage. They play a tall lineup. And Drake is 244th defending the interior, which is a big concern. But I think all of that shooting metrics, those will work in Drake's favor. And for whatever reason, this team is pretty good at rebounding despite not being that tall. So when you see like a big gap in size, sometimes you see this reflected in rebounding. But then there are teams that are just coached well. And Drake is the number 1 defensive rebounding team in the country, which shocked me considering their height. But DeVries is awesome, coach's kid. They have a stud. That's something I also look for when we get to March.
Iowa State looked incredible. South Dakota State, they've been a team that's made it quite a bit. I assume you think, Iowa State just smothers them defensively?
Yeah, no, I don't think. This is not the South Dakota State team we've seen recently with like Shireman and some other players they've had in the past.
No, they do have Zeke Mayo, but that's all they have.
He is good.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the top here and let's keep going. I guess we'll just fill out the whole region. FAU, I'm not a fan of. I think UConn smokes them. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. This is where it gets serious. San Diego State and Auburn. Obviously, clash of styles. Auburn super deep, wants to get wild. San Diego State, Ledee on the inside. What can they do?
I think Auburn's going to be pretty tricky for them, just looking at the height stuff. San Diego State plays largely through Ledee. This team can't shoot otherwise. And Auburn's excellent defensively. Auburn has really struggled when they've stepped up in competition. I'm not necessarily sure this is that kind of matchup when you look at how these teams stylistically will play against each other. My model on the back end can run these lines pretty early for neutral floors. It makes Auburn about a 7-point favorite, 6.5-point favorite over San Diego State. So this is not, a 9-1 matchup where I'm looking for an upset, or an 8-9 matchup or an 8-1 matchup where I'm looking for an upset. FAU, I think, is similar. If they were to get through here, they basically just have Golden, and Golden on the interior against Klingon. That's going to be a huge concern. So whether it's FAU or Northwestern, I realize I just went ahead in the bracket, but
yeah, it's all deadly.
The bottom line is I don't see any of these teams getting through against UConn. And in this matchup, it's probably going to be Auburn going through, but yeah, I don't know. This is a little closer than I think it would be against the spread, I guess.
Yeah, it's going to be a competitive game. There's no doubt. It's just not to take, because we're not going to spend 3 hours here, even though we could. But I saw a lot of people saying, man, what an awful draw for UConn. And I guess I see it. You've got the SEC champ, the Big Ten champ, so, some deep runs from last year. I didn't think it was that bad, though, honestly. Maybe you disagree. I don't really know. To the bottom, BYU and Illinois. Obviously, the over-under in this game could be what? 180? It's going to be ridiculous. I think Illinois is just too powerful. If they can limit the threes, big if, but that's really not their, I don't know. I think they'll be able to just straight outscore BYU if they have to.
I agree with you. For BYU, this is kind of an unsettling matchup because Illinois is comfortable playing with some pace.
Yeah.
So that's another issue, I think, for BYU. And even though Illinois doesn't quite have the shooters, their lineup is really tall, so that's going to be a problem against this BYU team. And when you have three studs like Hawkins, Damask, and Terry Shannon, you can't just take one of them away, which I think is going to be a problem for BYU in the defensive end. This team overall, 78th at defending the interior. That's kind of a problem for me when you have all these scorers that are so good at getting to the rim and then Hawkins playing the 5.
Drake, Iowa State would be a hilarious matchup. Battle of Iowa. Can Drake do enough, or is Iowa State that powerful?
I don't think they can do enough. Iowa State's playing incredible basketball. I know they just played a weekend Houston team, which still a Houston team that's very good, and they beat them twice now, so that's important. They beat a full-strength Houston earlier in the season. I believe that game was on the road. But as far as this game goes, again, I like this Drake team. They're awesome at shooting threes. Unfortunately for them, Iowa State is elite at defending everywhere. They have two of the best defenders in the country in Gilbert and Lipsey. This is going to be a really tough matchup for them. And then Iowa State playing deeper basketball with Jones and King and Momcilovic on the inside. They're getting, and Ward even, they're getting pretty good minutes out of their interior.
Chalky bracket so far in this region, but I actually think of the way I've been constructing mine, it has been a lot of chalk up here. Do you think that Auburn can cause any problems for UConn?
I don't.
Okay.
So again, Auburn, they played terrible basketball against the upper end of this conference. And not this conference, but the SEC. And they've really struggled anytime they face Q1. So that's including some non-con games. They're awesome and they don't really have a lot of blemishes when they step down. But man, they haven't played as much high-level competition as some other higher-seeded teams, and they've struggled when they've done so. I also just don't know about the overall talent. They're deep, but are players like, outside of Janai Broom, where is the star power? Like Holloway hasn't lived up to expectations for this team. I don't trust guys like Denver Jones or Katie Johnson. So for me, it's kind of just, I don't know how they match up with the stars of UConn.
I think they got the bodies, but it's going to take a massive effort. I'm certainly going to look, again, a lot of this goes, we're giving you a very peripheral look of a bracket. If you're in a tournament or a pool with 1,000 people, I think you should look to maybe have some of these teams get knocked out earlier. If you're in a pool with 10 people, 15 people, you can be a little more conservative. Who do you think UConn gets? Do they get Illinois or they get Iowa State?
So what do you think? This is the trickiest matchup I think we could have in this region.
I think, and again, it's just kind of a team that I tend to think that when you play like Iowa State, there's going to be a game or two where you legitimately just can't score. And we saw that last year, and I know they're so much better, but don't forget how bad Iowa State was. I believe it was against Pittsburgh. They scored like 30 points in a game. I think that just Illinois, if they can get guys like Goody and some of these third or fourth options to just stretch the floor, I'll take Shannon to be able to get in transition, even against Iowa State's defense. I think Illinois can really make a run here. They're playing great basketball. Danger on the inside. I think they're constructed to handle even a team like Iowa State.
Yeah, so for reference, I just ran this quick to see what the model would give me on the back end for spread. It gives Iowa State -1.5. So this is a spot where I'm with you. You're not really picking a major upset. And this was something we talked about with UConn last year when we did this exercise.
Yeah.
And they were a 4 seed. And we're like, man, they're going to be favored over to the 2. They're going to be favored over the 3. It's like you have a favorite going all this way. So we're looking at something really close to a pick 'em here. This is a tight spread either way on a neutral floor. Illinois has the studs. It's going to be close, but I think this is a spot where you can pick an upset.
UConn and Illinois. I think that'd be a popular Elite Eight game. I'd love to see it. Can Illinois stop what UConn does, which is basically everything at a very high level?
That is a great way to put it. I don't think so. UConn is kind of just one of these teams where they need the opponent to have everything go right. You need to hit your threes. And they're so variable with what they can do with Samson Johnson on the inside and then Klingon obviously protecting the rim. Hawkins is going to be at a massive size disadvantage. Your really only hope is getting Klingon in foul trouble. And even then, you still have to contend with Caravan and Newton and all these guards that are elite three-point shooters. It's too much for me. And with the defense UConn has been playing of late too, it's chalk, but I'm going to have this team in the Final Four.
All right. UConn is the first Final Four team on the board. Let's just go right to the West and we'll do the same thing. And then we'll have our bracket that much closer. We'll be halfway home. Okay. North Carolina, sorry, Howard and Wagner, you don't count. Mississippi State and Michigan State. I didn't think there was a chance Michigan State got left out, even though it's been an awful season for them. Can Tulu Smith and co cause problems, or you think Izzo finds a way?
I think they can cause problems. When you look at teams that are sort of built to beat Michigan State, I think you need to be tall because the Michigan State front court is atrocious. They haven't found any competent bodies there all season long. And Mississippi State has that. They're almost dead even in effective height. They actually hold a very drastic rebounding advantage. 22 to 148 in overall rebounding. On the offensive glass, it's even worse. And these efficiency metrics, you need to at least consider. Tolu Smith missed like 12 games to start the year. He's their center. So some of these interior metrics, they're only 124th in effective field goal, still 56 and inside. I think there might be some meat left on the bone, if you will, just not having him for a lot of the year. I'm actually really happy they got in the tournament because they had to sort of withstand these injuries early in the season. Yep. And I do not buy Michigan State whatsoever. This team, they're only 137th in effective field goal percentage, so they play terrible basketball inside. And then guys like Hoggard and Tyson Walker, as good as he is, and Akins, they just don't have enough from their guards to get through a lot of these matchups. If you want to pick them to win this game, they're a slight favorite. I think they get demolished in the second round, but Michigan State overall is a team I'm not buying. I would take Mississippi State.
5-12s are always interesting, and this is an interesting matchup. St. Mary's, who is a team I've been really high on, and they've shown flashes, taking on the Lopes, Grand Canyon, team that's won a bunch of games. The WAC is the WAC, but do you think that Grand Canyon could cause problems here, or St. Mary's just slows it down and really grinds them up?
This is tricky. St. Mary's had a terrible non-conference.
They really did.
They lost to Weber State, San Diego State, Xavier, Utah, and Boise State. That's 5 losses in a 6-game stretch. They also lost to Missouri State. And then this team basically went undefeated in conference with the loss to Gonzaga coming in the finale. They were 15-1 in conference play. Those of you that know this conference, the West Coast Conference, it's not exactly full of teams that are, they got one NIT team. They're all ranked like 150 or lower in power metrics, like San Diego, 259, Loyola Marymount, 192, Portland, 299, Pacific, 359, the third worst team in the country. Where are the Pepperdine, 226? Where are the good wins coming in this conference? So I like Grand Canyon actually quite a bit. You can parallel their schedules. I think there's actually, a decent case to be made that Grand Canyon played the tougher schedule. Their wins are pretty phenomenal. This team beat San Diego State in non-con. They had a close loss to South Carolina, single digits. Beat Louisiana Tech, who I think should have been the representative from that conference getting into the field. I don't know. What do you think? Are you a Grand Canyon guy? I actually kind of like this team.
I do like the team. I'm definitely higher on St. Mary's than you in life. There's no doubt about it. I like Grand Canyon, though. They're well coached. Foster knows what he's doing. It's a little weird because when you're unbeatable at home like that, you obviously are going to rack up some wins. But they're a competent team, and I think the spreads, it's a data point that I think we all need to recognize, and these are competitive games. This is a 4.5-point spread. I don't think it's a huge deal with who we pick. We can go upset here. I can live with it because I know they're just a high variance team, but I think that Alabama is really dangerous, and I think that Charleston is not going to be able to shoot with them. I know they're going to try, but I like Alabama in that next game quite a bit.
Yeah, I like Alabama quite a bit there. And just last thing on St. Mary's, this is one of the closer games in the first round. St. Mary's has a massive height advantage. This team they're the number 1 rebounding team in the country, and they play so slow. They're the 4th slowest team in the entire country. So they're going to slow down Grand Canyon, or at least try to. They have paths to winning. That's a coin flip to me too. But if you're playing in large field pools and stuff, that's an upset I could see. I do not see Charleston getting the upset over Alabama, who plays at the speed of light. They shoot 1,000,000 threes. They're 33rd in the country at hitting those threes. And they're shockingly 9th in the country at interior scoring too. So they have guards that can get to the rim. I still think their front court's a little questionable. But Charleston, their front court has been atrocious as well. 179th defending that area of the floor. Alabama might get tested because they don't play a lot of defense, but I don't see Charleston providing that.
Yeah, I would agree. 6-11, but again, only in seed. I like New Mexico in this game. I actually bet them already. It's on our Discord, which again, you can get for $1 as part of OddsShopper Premium. The link is below. Just use the code MADNESS. do you think New Mexico can handle them? Because I do.
New Mexico's been a tricky team for me to evaluate this year because they've had players in and out of the lineup all season long. Jalen House missed 5 games. Jamal Mashburn missed 8 games. Donovan Dent missed a game. You've had some of the other ancillary pieces like Baker and Amzil miss a game here and there. And a lot of their losses have occurred in those games. So from a power ranking standpoint and making this line, mathematically, I actually show some value on Clemson, but I also realize that New Mexico's statistical profile is kind of incomplete given all those injuries. They're an awesome team, man. I love some of these players. They have some transfers that came down. The only real concern I have is that they don't shoot the ball that well. Clemson has the edge there. But defensively, New Mexico has been elite, and they defend the floor really everywhere that Clemson succeeds. It's basically just, can you defend PJ Hall in the interior and then stop some threes from like YOLO Joe Girard? And New Mexico is 23rd in the country defending the three. I have no problem picking them here.
Colgate almost got knocked out. Watched that game in full. They had to really, really rally against Bucknell. Baylor, talk about shooting threes, and they make a lot of them. I would assume you think the Bears coast here.
Correct.
Okay. Dayton and Nevada. Nevada, I thought was maybe the most I can't believe they were a 10. I didn't expect that. I was a little surprised. It's not the easiest matchup. I mean, you've got Holmes on the other side. Do you see any value in the 7-10 matchup?
Yeah, so we're basically talking a pick 'em here.
We really are, yep.
Like you could see this one going either way. It's correctly seeded, in my opinion. The advantage is both direction. You have actually the better shooting team in Dayton, which surprised me. They're 9th in effective field goal to Nevada's 56th. And, Nevada has an elite shooter in like Jared Lucas. Blackshear is not quite the shooter he is. He's more of a creator. But then from 3, I mean, Dayton is 3rd in the country at shooting threes. 3rd. The 3-point percentage is elite for this team. That really surprised me. Both teams play with about the same height and same rebounding. It's 134 to 118 there. No real advantages in the periphery. The only real concern I have with Dayton is they don't really force any turnovers. They kind of just let you play in the half court, which I don't love against Blackshear and these experienced guards. The other thing is Nevada, they're in foul trouble quite a bit, whereas Dayton, Deron Holmes, and their bigs aren't often in foul trouble. So I kind of like an upside with Dayton in this game, but I don't know. I could be talked either way. This is very, very close.
Yeah, it's a tough game, and Arizona's had their struggles. I don't think they're going to struggle with either. I certainly don't think the Beach are going to get there. I'm a little disappointed that UC Irvine or UC Davis, 2 teams I've seen quite a bit of, couldn't get it there. No one in the world cares about what I'm about to say, but that conference, UCSB with Aijai Mitchell was one of the worst teams I've ever seen this year. I don't know what happened to them. Tried to buy on them for like a month straight. Didn't work. Long Beach State's coach has already been fired. It's a cool story. We're going to put Arizona through, are we not?
We are.
Okay. Now, I got North Carolina going through. Grand Canyon and Alabama, I think the Tide, just too much. Again, I know that they talk about not playing defense at times. I don't think Grand Canyon's the type of team, though, that could stop that.
I agree with you. I think this is a better matchup for Bama if Grand Canyon gets through.
Yes.
Just hypothetically, do you agree, or do you think St. Mary's provides a tougher test against Bama?
So if I was Bama, I would much rather see Grand Canyon. And this is what's always tricky about brackets. St. Mary's, I think, has a decent chance to lose to Grand Canyon. If they don't, I think St. Mary's has a chance to go deep in the tournament. I think they can really, really frustrate Alabama. And I think if they do that, I think there's a chance that one of them can beat North Carolina even. So it's dangerous, but in this situation, I think Alabama obviously will survive and advance.
I agree with you because Grand Canyon will play with Bama. Bama's 13th in pace. They're going to run and shoot a ton. Grand Canyon's a lot more comfortable in that game. St. Mary's will not allow it. They're going to slow it no matter what. And generally speaking, slower teams have an easier time dictating pace, which we've seen a lot of these fast teams when they run into the Virginians of the world, it kind of throws them off their game. So I agree with you in this instance, but I'm not picking against Bama.
New Mexico and Baylor. I do think New Mexico is a dangerous team, and this won't be that big of a spread if we get the game. Too much Baylor 3-point shooting, or do you think that House can do what he did in the Mount West tournament?
I tentatively side with Baylor here, but this is another close one for me. New Mexico, I think, just didn't play up to expectation through most of the year. So I'm going to run this on the back end quick and see what we get for a spread, because I think it actually might be closer than we think.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, so when I just put it through, it's a couple points, which is surprising to me.
Okay. New Mexico's good. I don't know. I like Patino.
Yeah.
I like that team.
Imagine if this team didn't win their conference and got left out.
I know. It's insane. Margins are that thin.
On Baylor, they're one of these teams that lives and dies by the three.
Yes.
And we see this every single season where it's happened to Bama a couple times, where you just live and die by the three, and then you can't end up getting there because one bad shooting game, and they don't play defense that well. Their interior with Misi, they're constantly in foul trouble. I don't know. You could see this going awry.
I'm gonna have some fun here. We're gonna get a little aggressive. I'm gonna put New Mexico through. I'm gonna put Arizona through. You okay with that?
Yes.
This would be interesting if it happens. I really hope it does, because I could have brackets that look like this. This would be a fun game. North Carolina and Alabama. Baycott on the inside, will he have his way? Or do you think that Alabama, with all, they got a million guys, do you think that they can continuously just ride that offense?
I don't think they can. They've been tripped up in SEC play. And the UNC starting five is just so good. And I still have a lot of questions with the Bama front court with Stevenson, Wagi, all these players that are really just replacement level bigs going against not just Baycott, but Ingram too. UNC has depth on the interior they haven't had in previous years. And you're even getting like somewhat competent minutes from Withers and stuff who play like 10 minutes a game. Plus, of course, Sears, he's a game changer for Alabama, but now you're contending against RJ Davis or, the Seth Tremble is actually one of your best defenders on the entire team. He doesn't do anything offensively, but that can frustrate what Bama does. So I think UNC is a pretty strong play here, especially coming off the loss. They should be pretty motivated in this game.
New Mexico and Arizona. I mean, every year it feels like Arizona, when they almost, the TCU game was wild a couple years ago with Matherin, and then Houston, and then last year obviously didn't even get started against Princeton. Ballo, Love. What do you make of this team? Because it's always not been a talent issue. It just seems that Arizona maybe it's the Pac-12's not as good as it seems. Can they make a deep run here? Can they get to North Carolina?
This is, I think, the weakest 2 seed, and I kind of want to spend some time here.
Okay.
They had a couple games that were played relatively well early in the season. They beat Duke on the road. That's a very young Duke team. You like seeing them in game 2. Beat Michigan State. That's aged poorly. Beat Wisconsin. I don't know what to make of this. It was on their home floor. Wisconsin had to come across the country. They played Purdue close. Then they lose to FAU and double OT, a team that's definitely weakened. They lost to Stanford, Washington State, Oregon State on the road, which is egregious. They're the 159th ranked team in the country. Washington State again, and then they dropped their season finale to USC before getting beat by a depleted Oregon team in the Pac-12 championship. If you have one spot like that, you get tripped up by a team that shouldn't be in the tournament or is, like a quad 3, quad 4 game, fine, it happens. But this team has like 6 of these, and they have just wildly inconsistent play. Ballo fouls. You have Kylan Boswell as your point guard. His minutes have been vastly reduced. I just don't know about the upper end of talent for this roster, and I just ran it on the back end. What do you think the spread would be in this game? My model's pretty accurate at determining these. What's your guess on what a spread would be on a neutral floor, of course?
I'll say Arizona -3.5.
Just a little bit wider. So, I mean, if you're picking an upset to go to, a Sweet 16, Elite 8 in this region, New Mexico is not a bad choice, and they're underseeded. So I don't think a lot of people are going to do this.
No. And again, this is all about can you make a stand here? We're getting dangerous. I'm going Lobos all the way. I don't even care. Again, risk tolerance. Keep in mind, are we guaranteed? New Mexico could lose to Clemson, obviously. We know that, but you got to make stands somewhere. And I kind of like this, because if you go chalky in your Final Four, with your ones and your two, you need some weird things to leverage to box people out. And it seems like we're going to have North Carolina in the Final Four here. Are we not?
I think so. And the point with New Mexico is this team is underseeded.
Yes.
A lot of people are blindly going to see the 11 seed, and they'll probably hear the discourse, oh, this team had to win their conference tournament more than likely to get here. We talked about how many injuries they sustained all year. When you look at this starting five that's healthy now, this team is awesome.
Yeah, New Mexico, like I said, it always takes, even FAU, I've referenced this a couple times. Everybody remembers their run last year. They were 1 or 2 plays away from losing to Memphis, and none of it ever would have happened. And that's how it works. Like, New Mexico is going to have to survive early, and if they get on a run, I wouldn't want to play them, just like any of these teams. All right, 2 regions in the books. We're going to go to the top right. But before I do, I already mentioned, and you're going to hear it a little more about OddsShopper and everything we're doing there. But one other thing, it's never bad to have a little extra money in the accounts during March Madness. And if you want $150 in bonus Bet365 has you covered. Now, depends where you live, of course. But here you go. Ready? It's like the selection committee. Arizona is in, Indiana, Iowa, North Carolina, New Jersey, Colorado, Louisiana, Ohio, Virginia, and Kentucky. If I just said your state, you're in the tournament at Bet365. Boom. You sign up, you bet $5. Win or lose, 150 bonus bets in the account. Got to be 21 plus, 18 in Kentucky. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. But that is a great way to get a little extra money in addition to everything. And then you spend $1 on the tools and our Discord, and now you're really rocking for March Madness. Longwood, dear God, an angry Houston team is upon us here. That just seems like a disaster waiting to happen for the Lancers. Poor guys.
Yeah, Longwood should not be here. They were the 5th seed in the Big South.
Yes.
I don't care who should have been in, either High Point or UNC Asheville, just vastly better teams. High Point would have been sick. That team was awesome this year. I'm just frustrated we didn't get a better team from this conference.
Me too. And UNC Asheville, not that I'm a big fan of them, but they do have an alpha in Pember who's been there forever, and we got none of that. This is, of all the games, I honestly think this might be one of the wildest games. Nebraska and Texas A&M. What do you make of Texas A&M, who, they got some impressive wins, but I don't know how good they are in Nebraska, who really can score.
That's the thing with Texas A&M. Effective field goal percentage, there's only 2 teams worse in the field at shooting than Texas A&M. They're 345th in effective field goal percentage. The 2 teams that are worse are Wagner, who has 7 scholarship players, in St. Peter's. That's how bad of a shooting team this is. They live on offensive rebounds. They're the number 1 team in the country. And this is never something I like backing, at least not consistently. So if you wanted to pick them in one game, they hit their threes. Sure, I get it. But a lot of times the team's missing threes. They're 353 in 3-point percentage. So you need 2 or 3 things to go right if you're playing this style of basketball. All right, you miss your first shot. Now you need to go and get a rebound, and then you need to put it back. Well, they're 301st in 2-point percentage. This team is horrific everywhere shooting the ball. They're also not that great on defense. 137 in interior defense, 172 from 3. Nebraska shoots a ton of threes. They're really good at it. This team is 71st in 3-point percentage, led by Tominaga. And their interior presence is actually pretty good, too. They're getting good minutes out of Alec, who complements Rink Mass and Juwan Gary. I personally love Nebraska in this spot, but it might just be a blind spot for me with Texas A&M. I don't know. This team just can't shoot.
Well, you may have a blind spot because this is your squad, and I've seen a lot of people jump on the 5.5, which I believe is gone in the betting markets. And James Madison's won a lot of games. You win 30, 31 games, you know what you're doing. Wisco, it battled, man. They took a lot of punches from Illinois. They tried to score with them, and ultimately, at the end of the game, just not enough. And first of all, everyone who's been banged up seems to be okay. Is that a fair statement? And then what do you think about them against James Madison?
It seems like it. Chucky Hepburn returned to their last game, played over 30 minutes. Wall, it's tough with him because he's also just battled fouls. So it's like, how many minutes would he have played with the injury, considering he was fouling constantly? I don't know. But he's played now, so I think there's no way he's missing this tournament. James Madison, they're an awesome team. I love the story. But for everything they've done, they have 1 win in the top 100. 1. It was against Michigan State in overtime in the opener. Yep. It was a team that I'm honestly not that big of a fan of. You guys probably already gathered that. But who's their next best win? Akron? I mean, the schedule is terrible. I don't know, man. It's really tough for me to evaluate these teams that play nobody. They get through their conference, a really weak conference. The Sun Belt is atrocious.
It was bad.
But yeah, man, I mean, I think this is going to be popular for an upset because people see the 31 record, the 31-3, but I'm not going to buy it. The Badgers finally getting it. I mean, the Badgers have been somewhat injured too this year. Getting Blackwell back has been awesome for them. Since Klesmit kind of went on a cold streak shooting, Blackwell shooting over 40% from three is big for them. He's also been banged up, so we'll see. But yeah, I like the Badgers.
Speaking of banged up, I didn't know if Vermont was going to get here. They were banged up. UMass Lowell and teams were not able to do it. Now they get Duke. I'm not really high on Duke, but I'm not really high on Vermont. Do you see any upset potential here?
I agree with you. They almost lost to Albany.
Yeah, that's bad.
And the game against New Hampshire, got a cover there, was closer than it should have been. Who's atrocious. Duke, man, this team has so much potential. They just haven't played to it. I think really their biggest problem is Filipkowski being so soft on the inside for a 7-footer. Vermont's not going to exploit that.
It's always weird to know, like, you know, a team like NC State, you get on a crazy run and obviously you're tired, but you're playing and you're in that. Now you take a break. Do they regress to a team that wasn't even close to making the tournament, or do they keep it going? I tentatively say that Texas Tech will find a way here, but do you think NC State can keep it going? Because, man, Burns and these guys were impressive. I cannot believe they beat North Carolina, honestly.
I can't believe they beat Louisville. I mean, they almost lost that game. Louisville was
the
winning.
Virginia game, I don't know if you saw the end of it. That was one of the craziest endings I've ever seen, with missed 3 throws and a banked in 3. How Virginia lost that game, I'll never know.
Yeah, Virginia should have been penalized for that and sent to the NIT, but unfortunately they're going to play in. NC State, man, I do not like this roster at all. If you just, like, evanmedia.com has phenomenal player analytics resources. They have an amazing Bayesian performance rating where you can sort by conference. The top player on this team is Michael O'Connell, who ranks 33rd in this conference. This team has no interior presence. Even the minutes that Mohamed Diarra is giving you, which essentially the efficiency stuff just comes down to rebounding. He's 6'10". He's still the 44th ranked player in this conference. I personally think DJ Burns is awful, and I cannot believe UNC allowed him to have any success. The guy's a 6'9" center, so he's undersized. I mean, you can watch him play. Just look at some highlights. I won't say anything about him, you know, physically, but man, this guy is going to be at a massive disadvantage in a ton of matchups. The biggest question to me is, what is the status of Warren Washington for Texas Tech? He hasn't played in weeks now. He's been in a boot. If he played, and unfortunately, this is a game that doesn't tip early, so you can't wait on this decision. But man, if Warren Washington plays, I'd be smashing Texas Tech, and I kind of like him even if he doesn't play.
Yeah. Again, I tend to agree. We'll have to see. Right now, it's a 4.5-point spread. This could end up on my card. I have not bet it, but I'm going to side with them. And then we get, of course, one of the most confusing teams in the country. I think you can loop them in with Creighton and Alabama and some of them. Kentucky looks like the best team at times. And then I'm like, you know what? Oakland can probably beat them the way they play at times. What do you make of Kentucky and how they play?
I think this is a terrible draw for Oakland.
Yeah, it is.
Who is it? I mean, like, Oakland is great at shooting threes. They'll try to, like, outrun you. This is not the matchup you want for that kind of game. And they're going to be at a height disadvantage, like a massive one. Oakland is 337th in height, so I would have loved to see them play like a different style of team that maybe is a little closer to them, because they could give a team problems with their three-point shooting. It's mainly Golke that does that, but man, Kentucky, just a brutal stylistic matchup who's going to run up and down the floor on you, and you really don't want these extra possessions if you're Oakland. That's where things can get bad.
Florida, who I'm a big fan of, takes on the play-in game. Colorado's a dangerous team. The play-in winner is always dangerous. What do you make? I know we don't even have to pick the game. Just, I want to ask you about Florida specifically. First of all, they lost a big yesterday to a broken leg. I love their coach. They're an atypical team the way they play. Do you think their style can translate if they get Marquette?
This is a weird part of the bracket. I actually think it's pretty weak. Every team has like a wart. You have Texas Tech without their big man. NC State shouldn't be here. Kentucky, if you've watched them play any length of time, sometimes they look like the Lakers, and then other times they look like Detroit Mercy. Florida just lost their big. They play really fast, and they sort of live and die by the three that they're not great at shooting. Boise is a team that maybe is a little underseeded. I personally love Colorado. I'm right with you. Getting Cody Williams back for the tournament's been awesome. But then Marquette, What do they look like? Kolek coming back from injury, and Western Kentucky probably shouldn't be here. They're not the top team in their conference. So I don't know. This is a really weak area of the bracket. Or am I off base with this?
No, there's question marks. So this is, I mean, the bracket always does this to me. Super weak, but like, I think a team like Colorado or certainly Marquette could go. I mean, Marquette's a 2 seed, but still, Florida, all these teams are super dangerous. I'm a big Marquette guy. I know you are as well in actually being a fan of them. I just like this team a lot. Do you think Kolek plays on Friday? Let's start there.
They've been very vocal about getting him ready for this game. So I think he plays. The bigger question is this a 22-minute outing or is this a 33 right away?
Yeah.
Because it's an oblique. I don't know how much conditioning he's been doing. I kind of think we see a cameo 20 to 24 minutes. So, yeah, I mean, like against the spread stuff, I'm certainly not touching this. But I don't think Marquette really struggles with Western Kentucky. I've been really disappointed with the Western Kentucky roster, considering all the Power 5 transfers they have. Like Rodney Howard from Georgia Tech's on this team, Christian Lander. They're full of Power 5 transfers, and they've just been awful. Also, Marquette's a terrible stylistic matchup who will run and press you. This team turns the ball over wildly. Western Kentucky, 270th in turnovers committed. Marquette might have, I don't know, like 26 points off just straight turnovers in this game, especially if Kolek plays. But if it's not Marquette coming out of here, I don't know. I kind of think Colorado is the most dangerous team down here for a team that's underseeded, especially when you look at their matchup against, like potentially against Boise. They have the advantage basically everywhere. This team is 18th in effective field goal. They have the edge over Florida here. They're better scoring inside than Florida and Boise. They shoot the three pretty well too. They're 4th in the country 3-point percentage, and that's all while being injured. So I think it is Colorado Marquette when we get to this area, but I don't know. This is a tough one.
Really difficult. And that's where I think you can make some interesting decisions. Okay, let's knock out Houston and Nebraska. Can Nebraska outscore them, or does Houston do what Houston does?
I think Houston will do what they do.
Real quick with Houston, are you worried about Roberts or anything in terms of they lost a key piece? He got a shin injury. You think they're okay?
I don't know. Houston's a team I don't love.
Neither do I.
They're a good team, and when I say this, I want to at least qualify saying they're a 1 seed for a reason. I think they're very good. What I mean by this is I think they're going to struggle to string together the wins necessary to win an NCAA tournament. This team is horrible shooting, 229th in effective field goal. They're like Texas A&M, where they need multiple things to go right because you're missing your first shot, then you need to rebound it, then you need to put it back without fouling. This team is 326th in fouls committed. They don't play a deep lineup. They've lost all their depth. Ramon Walker, Tugler, they're all out. Arsenault's been out for the year. So you have no depth if you get in foul trouble, which you're constantly in. One of your bigs is already injured. Can't shoot whatsoever. So what are we, just relying on the creation of Jamal Shed for 5 straight games? I mean, I don't know. I don't buy Houston long-term, but at some point I think they get tripped up. I don't know if Nebraska's the team to do it, but I don't know. Those are my Houston thoughts.
Who's the team to do it in the next round? Do you think that Wisconsin can beat Duke?
Holy smokes, this game is fascinating.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Because I don't think either team plays a lot of defense. Wisconsin's defense is horrific on the inside. They're 155th in interior defense. Filipkowski should have his way with Wall and Kroll. This team is not great at defending the three either. They're 346th. I just don't think Wisconsin plays strong enough defense to make it through to a Sweet 16 or an Elite 8. Duke is also just streaky. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if this upset occurs, but I do think Duke wins more times than not.
Texas Tech, we want to see some injury news. I want to clarify it. I think Kentucky is a very dangerous team, and I think that Kentucky is the type of team that could make a deep run here.
I agree with you. Do you think they have the advantage over Texas Tech even with Warren Washington?
I do. The way Kentucky can shoot, and Texas Tech is a weird team. I like what we just saw them, and I think it was more BYU than anything else. Like, they just smoked a BYU team that in some ways profiles like Kentucky. I think just Kentucky athletically can cause some problems, size-wise can cause some problems. I'm I wouldn't be stunned to see Kentucky in the Final Four. I'll say that.
I wouldn't either. If Kentucky gets any decent play out of those bigs, which has been streaky, it's crazy because they have, 4 of them really with Mitchell, Onyeso, Ivisic. I mean, if they get any minutes out of Bradshaw, it'd be shocking. But I mean, they have like 3 7-footers.
Yeah, they got bodies.
And Texas Tech has no interior. They're 251 with Warren Washington on the floor. That's effective height. This team can't defend the interior. Texas Tech is 145th there. So, I mean, to me, this game kind of comes down to what do you get out of the bigs? You don't necessarily need it because Kentucky's so good at shooting threes. But if they get any play out of these bigs, this game could get out of hand.
Who would Kentucky match up against? I definitely think if it's Colorado that they're live to beat Marquette, that pains me. What do you think about that game? How do you want to structure this? Tough game.
Really tough game. I think this would be troublesome for Marquette. The limitations to this Marquette team, I think, as good as Oso is on the inside, he's just not a threat to shoot any sort of threes whatsoever. He's never, I believe doesn't have a single 3-point attempt this year. If you watch his games, the farthest he'll shoot is like the free throw line with that push shot he loves to take. So, I mean, you don't have to guard him on the perimeter. And Colorado has an awesome front court. I love this front court. They're 33rd in effective height. They'll have basically what I consider a very strong rebounding edge. It's 9th to 283, and they're deep now. Williams is back. You have Lampkin, De Silva. That's 3 players. Then this team is 4th in the country at shooting threes. I mean, just the effective numbers, it's really close. What do you think a spread would be? I just ran it.
Between Colorado and Marquette?
Yeah, on a neutral. Assuming this is with 100% Kolick.
5.
It's 3.
3. Yeah. Okay.
So this is like a New Mexico situation where if you're playing with a ton of people.
Yep.
I mean, we saw this twice now. Michigan State's a team that got out of play-ins and went far. UCLA went to a final out of play-ins. This isn't unheard of.
Yeah. And I'm a huge, I don't know about you, I'm a big, like, Kolick is amazing, and I love Marquette. Simpson is also amazing. I really like him for Colorado. Good,
and Colorado
good underrated player.
Yeah. Colorado is 60th in the country, 3-point defense. They're a little worse on the interior. Fine. If Marquette's the matchup, that's fine with me. Oso is not the big, like, Filipkowski or Baycott kind of big.
Elite 8. Houston and Duke. God, I hope this isn't a matchup. I don't like these teams. I kind of know what I would do here. I would probably go, I'll just get right to it. I would go Houston and I would go Kentucky, and then I would probably have Kentucky over Houston. But what are your thoughts on the kind of remaining pod here?
That's exactly what I would do.
Yeah,
Dan,
go ahead.
No, like the Houston Duke, I think Houston gets tripped up. Duke just lacks so much physicality on the inside. Like that's exactly what Houston does. And then we've broken down Kentucky a lot here. They have so many ways to win when they're on their game. And plus, like, they're going to be way bigger than Houston on the inside. The only problem I have is just the discipline.
I mean, Kentucky, again, they can get tripped up by anybody, but if you get their best shot, they can
win it all. If they give you their best shot, 5 games in a row, they're winning it all.
Yeah. Kentucky is that type of team. All right. Final region. Then we'll talk about our Final Four. And again, if you have any questions for either of us, first of all, good Twitter follows one of us at least, and that would be Matt_Gajewski. I am here at JazzRaz DFS. We're both in Discord though. We're going to be talking through brackets. If you're in a pool, tell us the parameters. Tell us, what the format is. We'll be happy to take a look at your bracket if you want picks for the games. And if you want to see, again, the tools in action, I've got a couple up right here. Parlay Builder. These are the type of things that really can make a difference. Obviously, EV betting, market-based approach, live odds screens, this type of stuff, it's fantastic. And again, it's all there for the week for a single $1. Discord and these tools, just use the code MADNESS. Link is below. Let's get to the last region and let's see what we've done here. This is my favorite region. Okay, Purdue, Utah State, and TCU. Another Mountain West team in that 8-9 spot. What do you got about the Aggies here?
Yeah, I think this is right up there with the toughest games to pick in the entire tournament. So I could see you picking an upset with Utah State if you'd like to, but I think TCU, better team defensively. Unfortunately for them, they kind of run into like the trickiest stylistic matchup on paper for them. Utah State's awesome at scoring inside, largely through Osabor. They're 11th in interior scoring. TCU is 203 at interior defense. And then meanwhile, TCU 84th in 3-point percentage. Utah State is 3rd at defending the 3 in the entire country. So this is sort of like a horrific stylistic matchup unless TCU decides to try to score inside. So I don't know. As much as I like TCU and I think they are the better defensive team overall, I think stylistically this is kind of a pretty decent spot for Utah State. I don't know. What do you think? I could be convinced either way.
Yeah, it's not, I don't think it's the easiest game by any stretch. Going back and forth with this, I think some of this is correlation based. Like if you really like New Mexico and you really like Colorado State or Nevada, I give a little bump to Utah State. Like they do play, you're isolated in a silo for half the year against competition. And I do think you can correlate some of it in 8-9 matchups like this, where you give a bump to the Mountain West. This is the shadiest part of the whole bracket. Gonzaga and McNeese State. Zags aren't as good as normal. McNeese, talk about beating up on. I mean, you ever look at that conference? That conference is really bad. Really bad. They got Incarnate Word in there who threw down a brawl. Like, there's nobody in that conference that's even remotely on McNeese's level.
No, I mean, just looking at their overall rankings, McNeese comes in at 62. This is just power rankings, so don't read too much into this. Then number 2 is Texas A&M Corpus Christi, 176. They're the only other team in the conference in the top 200. Next up, you get Lamar at 205, the Nichols at 230. So yeah, you see a 30-3 record for McNeese. That's impressive. Anytime you win 30 games, something needs to be said. But then you also look at who they play. And like, my goodness, this schedule is a cupcake. They have one top 100 win all season long. It's against VCU. One top 100 win.
Yep. I think it's a really cool story, and Wells is a problem, but I don't think Gonzaga is getting tripped up here. All right, here we go. Obviously, I'm not qualified. I think we all know I'm the Samford guy. I love this team. It's my favorite team in the country, probably. I wanted to be them or Western Carolina, and we were fortunate to get Samford. It's becoming a trendy pick. Everyone's taking shots at Kansas right now. Samford plays an insane style. Akor is a problem. Do you think they can beat Kansas?
My biggest problem is Dickinson and McCullough are already practicing. And they don't have a top 100 win all year. Their best win is in conference against Western Carolina, who's 108. And I mean, they didn't really have a lot of chances. The only real competent teams they played a non-con were Purdue and VCU. I mean, you're not beating Purdue. It is what it is. The VCU game was fairly close, but VCU also didn't have Sean Barstow or Joe Bamasile. So I don't know. They're a tough evaluation for me just because of who they played and who they haven't played. But yeah, the players on this team are awesome. I just wish we would have even a glimpse of them against better teams and not Purdue. You know what I mean?
And I will throw this out there. You mentioned New Mexico. I don't know if you have it in front of you. It doesn't really matter because I definitely know on a macro level that they run a million guys, but they're never full. Very rarely are all of them playing. Like Marshall was hurt. Then they had a guy come off the bench with the ACL. Like they've been banged up all year. So it's very tough to know, like with Samford, okay, if you have all your bodies, if you're running your 10 and 12 man rotation, everyone's playing 20, 22 minutes. What do you look like? They shoot a ton of threes. They force a ton of turnovers. They commit a ton of fouls. They're dangerous. I really believe Samford can cause problems, but it's a huge step up in competition. And Kansas, as much as they're down, they're still a good team.
Yeah, and to speak to those losses, I think there's only one indefensible loss. It was against Mercer, where everyone was healthy. Their other losses outside the top 100, they did have all those injuries you talked about. Against Wofford, AJ State and McCray didn't play. Akor didn't play, nor did Campbell. Against Furman, Jermaine Marshall didn't play. And largely, they've been able to win through those injuries. So credit to them. And then two of their worst losses, just having so many injuries. That's something that at least needs to be noted too.
Yeah. All right, fine. We'll Kansas. South Carolina and Oregon. Dante's a monster. I don't know, man. What the hell's going on there? I like Oregon in this game. I think I've asked you multiple times. Like, what is the deal with South Carolina? I can't get a read on them. Do you have a read on them?
I don't know if anyone has a read on them. They were picked dead last in the preseason in this conference. I actually like some of the players on their team, like Michi Johnson, loved him as a transfer. And then I think the real reason why they've been able to jump up the rankings is they're getting good minutes out of newcomers we didn't expect. Talon Cooper, he's a lower level transfer. He's played awesome. The guy's shooting 45% from three. I don't think anyone expected that. Colin Murray Boyles, their freshman, 6'7" forward. This dude is an absolute monster, especially on the defensive end. Ranks in the top 500 nationally in blocks. Same thing for steals. Draws a million fouls. And then they've just gotten enough play out of their glue guys like Miles Studi, who we didn't really expect to be much, but he shoots 40% from three. That's his role. That's been something that's really helped this team. Oregon is also really tricky to evaluate because they've been so hurt. They have the most minutes missed out of any team in the field when you just isolate key contributors. And then the fact that they've been able to play through this, and Cuisinart's still playing through an injury right now, and he's playing awesome, which has been insane to see. Dante missed a lot of time this year, so getting him back has been huge. But I think there's advantages both directions. You have the better shooting team in Oregon. I think the overall better offensive team is South Carolina, just with the way they can create. And then South Carolina is kind of a tricky matchup for Oregon. They do defend the inside really well where Dante excels. So I don't know. In my mind, this is a greasy game, and I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other. So I'm going to defer to you.
I'm going with the Ducks. I think they're peaking at the right time. I think that Dante, their presence, their run, they beat a Colorado team in that Pac-12 championship that I was very impressed with. Again, 11-6, and you say, oh, upset. Not really. I mean, where's this spread? Yeah, exactly. It's nothing. So to me, I'll roll with the Ducks. It's going to be interesting to see exactly where they end up. I don't know. I'll tell you what. I really don't know much about Akron. Saw them play a little. Obviously, Kent State, the ending of that game was an all-timer. But Creighton's dangerous. Kalk on the inside. What do you make of Creighton?
I think they're probably the most dangerous 3 seed.
Yeah.
It's them. Kentucky is also extremely dangerous, but I don't know. Creighton's right there.
The threes are dangerous because Illinois is the 3-2.
That's right. Who's the last 3 again? I forget. Just
in the bottom left. I was gonna just someone stupid.
Oh, it's Baylor.
The threes are all really dangerous because they all shoot a ton of threes.
Yeah, and I mean this Creighton team, Shireman has been awesome. The guy rebounds the hell out of the ball. I think you need someone that can exploit Kalk, which Akron, I love Ali in their team, but I don't think they can.
What do you make of Texas? They're going to get the winner of Virginia, who shouldn't even be in the field, in Colorado State. Texas has got dudes. I mean, you were one of the original Ace Truthers against Ohio State back in the day. Texas has got the talent, but can they put it together even for a single game?
That's the great unknown. I think Colorado State gets by Virginia. That Virginia team cannot shoot. They're just horrific. And then I think that Texas is kind of a bad matchup for this Colorado State team if they do get by Virginia. It's kind of like the situation we laid out earlier with Grand Canyon and potentially playing, I believe it was Bama in that side. If Virginia gets out of this game, I think it's worse for Texas. If Colorado State gets out, who I think does get out, is better for Texas. So I think this first round game is the Longhorns to lose, if that makes sense. Yeah. And Disu playing now, I think, is a big boost for them on the inside, which matters more against Colorado State, who plays a teeny tiny lineup. They're 318th in effective height.
Going back to the top, we got Purdue and Utah State. I don't see any problems here, do you?
No, let's just squash the Purdue can't win in March Madness right now. It's a small sample. It's a different team than last year.
Yes. And I will just say from a game theory perspective, everybody thinks that. So if you're in a pool, Purdue is still a rightful 1 seed. Their win equity for the whole tournament is higher than people think. You're going to leverage if you take Purdue. You just are. Doesn't mean they're going to win. They could get knocked out again. But everyone is saying the same thing. Like, oh, UConn can't be beat and Purdue can't win. Just something to note.
They are a little banged up. I think they're fine. Braden Smith played through the injury.
I thought he was really hurt, and then he just played in the same game somehow.
Yeah. Then he came back and played in the next game. They lost, but it is what it is. Edey, there's been some speculation. He's not 100% who is this time of year, but the real difference Purdue this year versus last year, they still have Edey, so all their interior stuff, height, rebounding, interior scoring is all there and elite. But last year they were outside the top 200 in three-point percentage. When teams doubled Edey, this team was throwing up bricks. Now you're number 2 in the country in three-point percentage. A lot of that comes from the strides Braden Smith has made. Fletcher Lawyer was in a role that's different than this year. Essentially now he could just stand in the corner and shoot threes. And then the transfer of Lance Jones has been big for them. So they're just a different team. They're over 200 spots better in three-point percentage. They now have multiple ways to win if teams do try to take away Edey.
No doubt about it. Yeah, throw Gillis in there as well. They've got dudes. I think they're going to get Gonzaga. I do. I think that's a game that's going to happen. Do you see that?
I have no idea who wins this game. I mean, I think Kansas would be a slight favorite.
I'd agree with that.
Slight. And I don't trust him whatsoever. Do I trust Gonzaga? Absolutely not. But they do have interior presence. Ike is awesome. Love Anton. I think they have a better overall starting 5 than Kansas because Kansas basically plays with a starting 4. But yeah, I don't feel comfortable about either of these teams, to be honest. A great draw for whoever makes the Sweet 16. I don't think either of them should be there.
I agree with that as well. This, I can't remember, and I could be making things up. I feel like Oregon and Creighton have played in recent years in outrageous games, but I could just be making that up. I like Creighton a lot. I think that they are very dangerous, and I think that the Oregon experiment, if they can get past South Carolina, would come to a halt here.
I think so too. I like Creighton.
Then the Rick Barnes Bowl. Now this, talk about not knowing. Tennessee at times looks awesome. You've got a core who has seen it all. And then obviously Kennett comes in, transfers in. I'm interested in what you make of him. Do you have him as like a pure stud? I know defensively they say he's made strides, but he's still being hunted at times on that end. I mean, what do you make of the makeup of Tennessee's roster?
I love their roster. I think what they do around Connect is a big reason their defense is still stood up. You have all these veterans, Vescovy, Josiah Jordan-James, Ziegler back at full strength. You get enough out of your bench players like Meshack. So I love the roster overall, and they added the dynamic element of scoring. The problem with this region and what makes it so volatile is every team down here, until you get to the Elite Eight, plays so slow. Every team is going to put you into this grinder where if you mess up in your Tennessee, you could see, like a Purdue kind of upset. St. Peter's is 337 in pace. Colorado State, 268. Virginia, 362. Texas is the fastest at 196. Akron's 276. Creighton's 213. Oregon's 199. All these teams are so slow. It's going to be 3 straight meat grinder games for Tennessee, which is tough. But I mean, they're still the more talented team. So I'm going to pick them to go through. But you're going to see volatility in these really slow games. And Tennessee's going to play 3 of them in a row. Yeah.
Again, the variance in single elimination, we know that they're the better team, but it doesn't work out like that all the time. And Purdue would know. I think this would be a dream draw for Purdue if this is how it plays out. Again, I think they have the advantage over a team like Gonzaga.
Agreed. This is the best draw for a 1 seed, I think.
I agree. And again, a lot of people seem to think otherwise, but to me, of all the teams they could get, I don't even worry. I honestly think that I don't think this is a hot take. I think TCU would be the hardest of any team they would play in the first 3 games.
Yeah, I think that's a legitimate argument.
I don't think Gonzaga or Kansas is that big of a test. I think if they get Utah State, and then who knows, maybe they'll get Samford. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Again, this would be one of the games of the tournament if Creighton and Tennessee play. What a matchup that would be. I have no idea. Do you?
Yeah, I got to run this on the back end to see what a potential spread would be. So Creighton still plays. They play slow, but they always have these high totals because they're so efficient scoring the ball, which Creighton is probably the weirdest team in the country. We saw them get absolutely run by UConn, and then they kind of ran them themselves.
Yep.
My model makes this a pick 'em, dude.
Yeah.
Straight up pick 'em. Do you think more people will pick Tennessee or Creighton?
I think more people will pick Tennessee.
I think you're right. Stylistically, Creighton is the far better shooting team, third in the country in effective field goal. Tennessee 135th. So can they exploit any potential defensive weaknesses? I think Tennessee's a little weaker defending the three. Creighton can certainly shoot those. Height, Creighton is way taller. They're fifth in effective height. Tennessee 142. I think the micro edges point towards Creighton, but man, this is close.
Close game. Again, kind of gut feel at that point. Blue Jays, Boilermakers. It would be a hell of a game. Does Purdue do it, or do you think Creighton moves on?
I think Purdue does it, but man, this is a dangerous Elite Eight game. Creighton's beat teams with similar compositions. We've seen them beat Donovan Clingan and the UConn Huskies. I still think you need their best shot. Like, they shot crazy from three. Ashworth was insane in that game. So I don't know. I think if you don't get the best shot or you miss a couple threes, Purdue runs you. And we've seen that with Purdue games. Some of their really close games and losses. That overtime game against Northwestern had to shoot 50% from three to get it to OT, and then they lost. Woo! Also, like, if Edey gets Kalk in trouble foul-wise, which almost never happens, but if it happens, I think Creighton's cooked.
Yeah, that is the opportunity cost on the interior is massive. That's a cool region. I like that quite a bit. All right. We've got a Final Four. Again, I like the way they did this. Again, there's a million ways to structure a bracket. We're going to be talking about it in Discord. I'm going to make all sorts of brackets. Some will have a lot of one seeds, some won't. But this is cool because we have a couple of double-digit seeds making runs. And I think that does leverage with even having, some of the main guys here and no Houston in the Final Four. So if you're here, Final Four predictions. Again, before we give them, I'm just going to do one last reminder for people because when Thursday comes around, this is going away. And I really would hate for people to say, I didn't know about this. $1 for a week of OddsShopper Premium, which means the tools, the market-based approach, parlay builder, everything, the line shopping, it's all there. The Discord with me and Matt and the entire team, not just for college basketball, for all the sports, obviously the community. It's $1. So if you're saying, I don't even know what this guy's talking about, it's worth $1 to probably find out. Use the code MADNESS. Again, it's just up until the first tip of those games. It's a great community, and we're so excited for people to join and see what we're about. We got to make some predictions here. We got UConn and North Carolina. Can anyone stop this Huskies train?
I don't think so. When you just go down the roster, you have Clingan and Samson Johnson on the inside. You're going to battle Baycott and Ingram. I think the advantage is UConn's direction, even if one of them gets in foul trouble. Your depth is key. Guard play, I love RJ Davis. He's an All-American for a reason, but you're still going against fellow All-American Tristan Newton, Steph Castle, the NBA. Future's bright for him. And then Caravan and Spencer, two 40% three-point shooters. Who do you prioritize on defense if you're North Carolina? Whoever you prioritize, someone else is probably going to beat you. And someone can have an off night for UConn. That's like, you need 3 off nights for this team. Or you need the opposing team to just shoot lights out like Creighton did in their game against them. It's like you need the best shot of your opponent, and then you need 3 guys to have an off night for UConn.
It is a tall task for anybody.
They murdered Marquette 3 times.
Yep, we were both there. We've seen it in person. I was there, you were there. And they just, even in the third matchup, I know Kolek didn't play. I watched the game from start to finish. Marquette hung in.
And they benched Clingan because Clingan did something. I can't remember what it was. Clingan did something like dumb right away. So then they had like a self-imposed tax, like took Clingan out immediately. And then he played limited minutes.
And then they open it up and it gets away. On the other side, again, these are monster games with talent everywhere. What do you think about what Purdue could do against the Kentucky offense?
They're probably going to score at will. And I think if you're Kentucky, your game plan is start one of your 5s. I don't care who it is. Onyeso, Bradshaw, Ivasic. Throw the ball in the paint to Edey. Try to get him in foul trouble immediately, because if one of your bigs fouls, who cares? They're interchangeable, big, stiff 7-footers. Luckily, you have 3 of them. So, if I'm Kentucky, I'm just trying to get the ball straight to Edey and get him in foul trouble immediately and change the game. Can they do that? I don't know. A lot of teams really struggle to, and Edey shoots essentially more free throws than anyone in the country. He's amazing at drawing fouls. I think Purdue wins the game, but I think that's what you try to do if you're Kentucky, is just get Edey in foul trouble. Change the game.
Comeback story, both storylines would be incredible. You would have a possible repeat champion who, I don't even, Florida, I think is the last one. It's been quite a while. Or Matt Painter joins the list of, the coaches that couldn't win until they won. Where do you put the champ on the board for us?
I still think it's UConn when you just look starting five. I think 4 for 4, these teams are pretty close until you get to the 5th starter for these two teams. And then you've got Trey Kaufman-Renn, or they'll play Gillis a lot. I think that's the spot where you really exploit this. UConn has 6 players, honestly, probably 7 or 8 once you start factoring in like Diarra and Samson Johnson and some of the other players on the bench that I think have drastic advantages over the Trey Kaufman-Renn, Mason Gillis, Cam Heide, that type player for Purdue. Whether it comes down to it, I'm not sure. This could be something where micro edges like fouls, if Klingen's in foul trouble or Edey's in foul trouble, something dictates the matchup like that. But honestly, I think the stronger guard plays on the UConn side, and I think they're deeper as well.
Yeah, listen, UConn's the best team, and they're going to be a tough out. Someone's going to really have to take them down. And this is the fascinating thing about brackets. I think it really, really opens it up. Like, I know for a fact I'm going to have some brackets in some pools that I'm knocking UConn out. I'm going to knock them out to Illinois. I'm going to knock them out to even maybe Auburn at times. But because it's large field, and it's going to be fascinating because this team is so good and it's always wide open. But especially this year, I want to see what happens with some of these big high octane 3 seeds, and for Purdue, who's a 1 seed in name, but I think most people are not treating them like a 1 seed. That was some great work, my friend. Any final thoughts for the people? Tell them what you got going on, and anything else you want to get out there.
Yeah, we'll have content all week. I know it's like some Final Four sleepers, stuff like that. But I think my final thoughts on just your bracket, the main thing I think to consider is how many people you're playing against. If you're playing in a family pool, you can play pretty chalky and maybe even have all 4 1 seeds, because you can have the other players in your pool just sort of knock themselves out of the tournament by a crazy upset here and there. And then look at the Vegas totals, especially when you get to these later rounds. If you have questions on this, feel free to DM me. They're open. New Mexico's not going to be a big underdog to really anyone they face until maybe the Elite 8 Final Four. They're, a double-digit seed. There's a couple teams like that in the tournament. So when you're picking your upsets, try to do them as thoughtfully as possible. And that's really it.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think there's a huge difference between, everyone thinks upsets of I have to find a 15 seed or a 16 seed or a 14 seed. The other way to pick upsets is to have a 10 seed or an 11 seed make a deep run. And those are good teams, really good teams that, for whatever reason, injuries or just didn't get it going fully during the year. And they've played some of the best, beat some of the best of the best. It's going to be an awesome week. Again, you're going to see me and Matt plenty here on OddsShopper. Once again, just want to thank everyone for all the support. We're over 125,000 subs on this channel. We want every one of you to be part of the OddsShopper community. So if you are looking for it, again, that link is below to join. Just use that code MADNESS and we'll see it in there. But for me, for Matt, and for all of us here at OddsShopper, enjoy the tournament, enjoy the brackets. Let's win some money. We'll talk to you guys soon.